and welcome to the ADHD and Me podcast with me, your host, ADHD Girl. In today's episode, we're talking about an alternative treatment to ADHD other than medication, and that treatment is hypnotherapy. It was fascinating to talk to our expert who explains how hypnotherapy can work so well for ADHD because she understands it from both a professional and a personal perspective. Joining me, I have Keira, and she specialises in hypnotherapy as a treatment for ADHD. Welcome to the podcast, Keira. Would you like to tell me a little bit about yourself, how you got to where you are? How did you end up doing hypnotherapy?
I used to be a personal trainer and a yoga teacher. I did that for over a decade and just got to the point where I really wanted to change, very burnt out mentally and physically. I lived a very difficult life, had an abusive childhood. I had brain surgery at the age of 11, which left me visually impaired. And I then suffered with mental health issues, and then I lost my mother. So I'd gathered a big old chunk of stress myself. Working as a personal trainer had been great, but it had then got to the point where it wasn't good for me anymore. And I really wanted to change careers. I wanted to stay in wellness, but I wanted to do something that helped me as well. And hypnotherapy just popped into my brain out of nowhere. And very fortunately, the nearest hypnotherapy course to me was a solution-focused hypnotherapy course. And I knew nothing about hypnotherapy. I didn't know that there were so many different types. But this particular type absolutely was perfect because it's all about the client learning about the brain, learning and therefore pennies dropping for how their own behavior is affecting them and other people's behavior, them starting to gather a toolkit together and going forward without me. So it's a shorter term therapy. It's something that empowers the client, and that is why it works really well for ADHD. So this is something that's become a massive passion of mine, helping people from all different facets. But ADHD has naturally become a focus for me because my husband, whilst me doing this job, has realised he has ADHD.
Wow.
Which has made a lot of sense and put a lot of things in perspective, but where I used to think I was going mad and he used to think he was going mad. And also I've ended up gathering quite a few clients with ADHD, and also a friend has realised he has ADHD. So it's become a real passion of how this type of therapy is really helpful for people navigating that.
Yeah, and I think there's so many misconceptions out there about hypnotherapy, because I think when people hear the word hypnotherapy, I think they think of being hypnotized and all that, but it's not quite like that, is it?
No, it's not. And the bit that people traditionally think of as hypnotherapy is within solution-focused hypnotherapy, and within a lot of other types as well, is simply a deep relaxation. So it gives the brain a chance to thoroughly and properly relax, the brain waves to slow down. And for you then, a relaxed brain works so much better than a stressed brain. So obviously for someone with ADHD, they struggle with the working memory, they struggle with the impulsivity, they struggle with what we call side quests, which is a really beautiful term we got from, I think it's ADHD Love on YouTube.
Yes,
the girl with blue hair. Fantastic. And when the brain is relaxed, it's in the intellectual part of the brain, and that allows it to make better decisions and better choices and to be quiet. As obviously somebody with ADHD, the brain being quiet is very difficult. So we can make it as quiet as we can by a deep relaxation. It can start from the best place possible. So the hypnotherapy literally just means that. Yeah.
Wow. You know, that just sounds amazing. Like, I think anyone with ADHD is just going to be so like, that's what I need. And one of my other questions for you was going to be, why is this suited to ADHD? But I think you probably just answered that really well, because it is about de-stressing the brain so it can function at a good level.
I was just going to say, so it can get out of its own way. Nothing in the way. So the ADHD can be worked with rather than
exactly.
Oh, this is such a difficult challenge. Yeah, it is definitely a challenge, as any neurodiversity is. But yeah, a quiet brain can get out of its own way.
Really does. I think there's only one time in my life that with ADHD that I've experienced real, actual deep relaxation. And it was actually when I went and watched a classical music concert. I found that classical music does help me to relax to a certain extent. But that concert was just something else. And I just thought, if I could be in this state all the time.
We give our clients of any kind, this is because SFH, solution focused hypnotherapy, we use the same approach, whatever you're coming with. Okay. So it keeps it simple, keeps it really simple. So the two main tools that we give our clients from session one, we first educate them about the brain. We then give them the relaxation to listen to at home. Then we ask them to do a task called What's Been Good. And this is literally what it says on the tin. You write down what's been good, not what's been good for everyone else and what you should be grateful for, what's been good for you as an individual. Yeah. And that's really different. But what this does is when we're writing it down and when we're thinking about it and when we're talking about what's been good, it produces serotonin in the brain. Also dopamine, which obviously ADHDers need lots of extra dopamine. But when that serotonin is produced, it pulls your brain into what we call the intellectual part of the brain. That's the bit where we can be rational, we can plan, we can think about things carefully. One particular ADHD client that I have, that is his absolute go-to every single morning. He listens to the relaxation, he does his What's Been Good. He begins the day then on the best tangent he possibly can. And they're two simple free tools that people can take away today because they can access the relaxation on my website that mean the brain is in the best possible state to begin with. So my husband also does those two things every single day as somebody with ADHD. And if he doesn't do them, that's when he starts to notice, he starts to feel like he's possessed. Because his ADHD really comes out physically in that his hands will just start to move. He's a drummer, so he knows he needs to go and use drums. But that's where we're putting people with those tools. Yeah,
it just sounds like such a good solution to ADHD. Everything from the relaxation to that sense of awareness, which is so important, isn't it, for ADHD? The more you know about yourself and how you function, the better you can be.
You've really hit the nail on the head. And this is what my husband and my close friend, who are also a client of mine, that's what they've said. It gives them the ability to stand back from their behavior and go, okay, that's why people are getting annoyed with that. Or that's why I'm working myself into a panic attack. Or also with the writing down and what's been good, it also gives them a body of evidence to look back on and go, I'm actually doing really well. I'm not a failure. I do forget stuff. Everybody does. But this is okay. I'm standing back and I'm able to look from a quiet place. I have actually got a lot of skills that other people do not have. So I met a girl on holiday recently who had ADHD. She was talking to me about how she was in the taxi with her boyfriend and she was noticing all this wildlife. Oh my God, there's a massive lizard on the road. There's this, there's that. He hadn't noticed. And she said to me, I love having ADHD because you notice everything.
Yeah.
And that's really beautiful because, yes, you do notice everything.
Yeah.
Amazing.
And that's another misconception, isn't it? Because obviously ADHD, attention deficit, people assume that there's no attention whatsoever. Actually, ADHD is actually too much attention. It's paying attention to every single thing that's going on at once and not seeing those smaller details.
It's a silly name, isn't it? It's actually not true. Like you say, it's rubbish. Actually,
focus deficit, really. But
yeah. And you go off very quickly onto a new shiny object. But I really use my husband's hyperfocus around the house because if I've got a boring job that needs doing where something needs cleaning within an inch of its life and taking apart and then having to put it back together, I say, get your hyperfocus on that, mate, because he'll sit there and be like possessed and doing this thing. I just would be so bored doing. But
I love the hyperfocus.
Propelled forward. It's amazing. Yeah. That brings me on to, if I may touch on something, the importance of finding the right job. Have ADHD, because I've had a client come to me and it was very obvious from the start that his job just wasn't ticking any boxes for him. He was a salesperson and he could be chasing a sales lead for months. There was no dopamine to be had. Whereas my husband's an electrician and it ticked the boxes so beautifully because it's dopamine. His hyperfocus is being used to its absolute best. He works fast, he works efficiently, but also because he's getting so much dopamine from his job, when he gets home, he's not roaming around searching for it. When he was a driving instructor, he would come home and he was depressed. He was very depressed because it just wasn't ticking the box. So I think
we've got to find something that kind of gets rid of that mental energy, haven't you? And it's so important, isn't it, to find a job that creatively and mentally fulfills that ADHD.
100%, because I do know someone else with ADHD and they are depressed because they're sitting at home all day on their own in front of a computer screen and it's not giving them the stimulation.
And it's so hard, isn't it? Because even with ADHD, there's different personalities. So trying to find that job, one job for ADHD, like for example, electrician, that sounds amazing if we can do that. That for me would probably be the worst job because I have a massive fear of being electrocuted.
There we go. Yeah, absolutely. And you're totally right. Yeah. And that's another reason why this type of therapy works really beautifully, because it allows people to go, what is best for me?
Yes, definitely. Very individualized.
To find where my other friend and client with ADHD, he helps people with their story brand. So helps people find who writes copy for them. He helps people find what their story is. And he is at home in front of the computer screen all day, but there are so much for him to do and so many ways for him to be creative that those side quests actually lead to enormous productivity and creativity. So you're exactly right. It's getting to know yourself.
So how do you feel about medication? Do you think it's a very individual decision? Do you think it can work well with the hypnotherapy, or do you see hypnotherapy as an alternative to medication? Like, where do you sit within that?
It can be both. So I would never, ever in a million years tell somebody to take or not take medication. I think it is completely personal.
Yeah.
However, if you choose, as my husband has, not to be medicated, this can be an amazing alternative. He chooses not to be. He feels that with this, he's managing it. Learning to manage it better and better all the time. It also depends how your ADHD manifests.
Yeah.
Also, I have heard from a pharmacist also be difficult to get medication for adults in this country, depending on where you live, to get sufficient amounts for it to give you the results you're looking for. Also, sadly, I did know a client who he found an amazing medication and it really helped, but then the side effects were awful. It constricted his throat. So he couldn't take the medication. So this, if you're taking medication, solution-focused hypnotherapy can only help it work better.
Yeah.
So it can run alongside anything. But if you choose not to be, it can also be a substitute for that. Yeah. And it also gives you then something, whereas anytime you couldn't get hold of your meds, change them, you've got tools within yourself that help you. Like for my husband, he always carries cans of 0 sugar Coke around because caffeine's incredibly helpful for him.
Yeah, caffeine.
Absolutely.
So I drink so much coffee.
Exactly. And for you, that works. Like for me, I'd be hitting the roof. You're on a nice even keel. And that's been revolutionary for him because he struggled with his sleep, which we understand with his sleep. And people were saying, don't drink caffeine, do this, do that. Of course, that was completely wrong.
Yeah.
Now he's drinking caffeine all day long and he feels lovely.
Yes, that's good. I think you've really hit an important point there, though, because one point to mention is the medication shortage, which meant that unfortunately a lot of adults and some children had to go for quite long periods. I believe it's getting better now, but there was a point where people were really struggling to get hold of medication. So again, that reiterates how important it is having other tools as well to be able to turn to. I think sometimes, within the NHS, they're very quick to push the medication, which is fine. It's a very individual choice. I'm with you on that. There doesn't seem to be a lot of alternatives available, or no one's kind of pushing people towards anything except for medication, are they?
Yes. And you've hit another nail on the head there, is that I do get a lot of people who come to me for all sorts of reasons that say, I don't know where else to turn, or this is my last resort. I just thought I've tried everything else. Just thought I'd try this type of hypnotherapy. So you're exactly right. I think there's a lot of people, a lot of parents thinking, what can I do to help my child live the best life possible?
Yeah, yeah. Have you heard of, just because I know we've touched on a little bit about trauma, and I know you've got your own personal trauma. I don't know whether you've heard of someone called Gaber Mate, who actually suggests that ADHD is caused by trauma, which I think is a very interesting perspective. And I go back and forth when I look at what he has to say versus how many people have ADHD. What's your thoughts around that?
I think it's really interesting. Trauma makes everything more difficult to deal
It does.
with.
Yeah.
So whatever you're
It's
dealing
called
with,
baggage.
whether it's physical or a mental different, trauma makes everything way harder. It's an interesting one. I think neuroscience is advancing so fast now. I'm sitting back and observing and holding judgment at the moment to see. Also got several friends who are primary school teachers, and I also know that because of excessive screen time, keeping kids indoors all the time, etc., etc. There are a lot of kids who are presenting as ADHD who don't actually have ADHD.
Which, when you look at the link to dopamine and screens and everything, it does make sense. Yeah,
absolutely, absolutely. So at the moment, I absolutely can. I think find that very interesting. Where it's coming from, because I think his family have a lot of trauma in their past, where they lived through the Holocaust and things like that. Maybe. So he's got a very solid kind of background look at that. And of course, we now know trauma does pass down the generational line because your mother's pregnant, she's stressed, all the stress hormones feed into you. This changes how your brain is. I think it's very interesting, and I think there's lots more to find out about it. What I would say is, what I do, it really doesn't matter how that person's got there. We can just work with where they are now and we just move forward. Yeah, I'm interested. I'm watching from the sidelines and observing.
I like that as well, because it's so subjective, isn't it? Because at one point I would have argued that ADHD is hereditary, because I would certainly say one of my parents has got it, and then I know people with ADHD and other parents got it. But then obviously, like you said, that it doesn't account things like generational trauma, things like that. So it's just a bit of a minefield, isn't it, really?
It is. And somebody else I met on holiday, a different holiday, when he had ADHD. And as we know, ADHD rarely comes alone. So you might have sensory processing disorder, you might have elements of autism, things like that, which he was very interested in. But he said from the research he'd read that ADHD is the most genetically passed on of the neurodiversities. He said if your parent has ADHD, you're 25% likely to have ADHD as well. So again, it's just from where I am, because everything I do is rooted in neuroscience, watching it roll forward and find out,
waiting for the research to become available and things like that. Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah.
And you've said, correct me if I'm wrong, but hypnotherapy helped you in terms of overcoming some of your trauma. Yeah, would you mind sharing a little bit about that, like your kind of journey with that?
Yeah, it saved my life. I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for it. I would have taken my own life, because I was absolutely stuck. And stuck is a word that I use quite a lot when talking to my clients and on my website and things, because it is a very descriptive word, isn't it? You don't know where else to go, you don't know what else to do. And obviously with more other traditional talk therapies, they want you to go back and they want you to talk about what you've been through. But with modern neuroscience and what we do now, what I do now is shows that if we keep talking about it, your brain thinks it's happening again. And all those memories go back in what we call the stress bucket, and they've got to be processed all over again. So for me, I'd been through, like I said, abusive childhood, and then I'd had to learn to cope with, I lost a lot of my peripheral vision. So now the only things I don't do is drive and play contact sports, but it's that learning to cope and that constant, the physical trauma of having had brain surgery, and it gathers pace and then something else happens and you get to that point where you are just surviving, then thriving, and your sleep's affected and all of this kind of stuff. So what I love about this type of therapy is that you're not having to go back and talk about the past. We're getting your brain into the perfect place to do all that processing overnight, and you don't have to talk about it again. And that was a light bulb moment for me in moving forward, and therefore being able to help other people to go. There's a simpler kind of science-based way. We don't have to go back and do horrible exposure therapy. We don't have to talk about, because with ADHD, a lot of my clients who have it talk about the shame of, I feel embarrassed, I can't remember this, I've muck stuff up again. I've looked like I don't care about somebody because I've not turned up to something. And I think all that shame, that goes in, again, what we term the stress bucket. And just then being able to let themselves off the hook and go, I'm working on this, I'm getting better. Look at all my what's been goods. I've actually done really well this week is really wonderful, because I remember how that felt. And I remember how you think, I have got skills, I am moving forward, life has value. And for me, that's the biggest thing that I took from it. And of course, it's a never ending journey, isn't it? All go on, we all keep working, we all keep improving. But for me and for my clients, it's a privilege to have had this information and to see what a massive difference it makes to.
Wow. I just think that's so inspirational, because I really admire people who take their own trauma and their personal stories and they use it to help others. So well done to you. And I think it's such a really interesting perspective, because there are people out there who don't want to deep dive into that trauma. They're aware it's happened. They just want to keep moving forward. So this sounds like a really nice way of saying I'm working on those issues without actually going backwards.
Yes.
Yeah.
You're exactly right. It's like, we're not pretending it didn't happen, and we're not pretending that bad things don't happen, but we're saying, because we process all those memories in our REM sleep. So if we stop talking about it and we start focusing on what's been good, and when I say solution focus, like I said, it's not pretending bad things never happen, but it's just getting the brain into the most resilient, resourceful place it can. Yeah, you're exactly right. People are like, I'm not going to pretend it hasn't. Doing this doesn't mean pretending it's not happened or not getting rid of it. I just can stop talking about it. And the instant you stop talking about it, of course, you feel lighter and you feel good, because you're like, oh. And sometimes I have clients who come to me who burst into tears when I tell them that, through joy that they're not going to have to tell that horrible story again and again, or talk about, why was that difficult? And today's been a bad day for you. And why has it been a bad day? And so, yeah, it's a privilege. It really is.
Wow. This sounds like an amazing kind of job.
And the other great thing is it's short term. Somebody might just come to me for 6 sessions. By that end of that 6 sessions, they've learned enough about themselves and how to manage ADHD, for instance, in the best way possible. And because they've gained that knowledge, as they keep living, that knowledge keeps getting added to, and they keep learning more about themselves.
Wow, it just sounds like a really nice journey that gives you the stepping stones to it.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, I give you the stepping stones and then off you go. And,
Wow. So if people want to know more, where can they go? Like, you have a website?
Yes, I've got a website. It's www.positivechangehypnotherapy.co.uk.
Wow.
And that is my kind of main resource at the moment. As I say, the relaxation is available on there. If people want to use that, stick it on best time as you're going to sleep. If you fall asleep while you're listening, it doesn't matter, because your brain keeps listening for 2 hours.
Wow. I think I might have to check that out myself.
Lovely.
Oh, thank you so much for coming on the show today. I think it's been a really interesting discussion. There's been so many different points, and it's been so fascinating learning about what you do and how you help so many people with ADHD.
Total pleasure. It's been wonderful to talk to you. Thank you.
Well, now you know that hypnotherapy isn't just about hypnotizing people. It's about digging deeper into yourself to find ways that work for you. We all need that when we have ADHD. Take care, ADHDers and allies. Join us next month, where we'll be talking about emotional regulation when it comes to ADHD.